Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. In this episode of Travis Talking, I will cover my third experience with the Amanita Muscaria mushroom. And I would just like to mention how a short disclaimer and to anybody who is considering taking this mushroom for psychedelic purposes, obviously look into the preparation and all of that. But do not take this mushroom lightly. This is not a toy by any means. This is an incredibly sacred object and must be treated as such. Especially if this is your first time taking it, I'd advise a sitter and just be very, very cautious and look into what possibly can go wrong. Some of the negative effects that I have experienced is loss of motor control to the point where I couldn't move and I couldn't control my body, as well as a very strong heart rate and also my first trip I really was very close to dying. There was a couple of things had been different, I would have died, and that is very, very serious. And with all of that, these mushrooms are still incredibly amazing and have huge potential for humanity and what they can teach us if used correctly. So it must be stressed. They should be used correctly. Every time I've done this, it's been very taxing on my mind and my body, and it's taken me a few days at the least to recover. And I've been extremely hungry, so I've ate a lot of food and all of that. And even just from one day of tripping, I have still information that has taken weeks to months to fully digest and integrate into my life. Okay, and with all of that, my third experience. After fully digesting the last experiences, I had decided to go for a third round. This time I journeyed deeper than the previous two times. I was also in a different setting, now being in the north of the North Island of New Zealand. It was quite interesting actually. I had stayed at this place before, and on my re-arrival, within 24 hours, I had found a big stash of amanitas and proceeded to dry them, this time with the help of an oven. It was very mystical. I was very surprised to just, it was like the mushrooms greeted me, they were waiting for me, and the feeling I had when I was going around and collecting them was just, oh, it was magic. So, yeah, and I believe this wasn't an accident, these mushrooms truly fascinate me, and I wonder if the mushroom organism in one particular area is but a superorganism stretching for miles and miles. Perhaps we could go even further to say they are all connected by an incredible network beneath our feet. Who knows? So this time I was a bit brave and decided to take approximately 20 grams. I began at 9:30 in the morning, setting aside the whole day, and having done all the trip preparations the day before, I think taking this much so fast was a bit overzealous of me. Before I knew it, within an hour or so, I was in a deep dream where once again I thought the mushrooms were poisonous and I was going to die. Then I did die, but this time it was repeated, and it was not very pleasant as the way I died the first time with the grandiose life review and the spirits and all of that. It was actually wasn't very nice. I just kept dying and then repeating, and I got very delusional again and completely forgot I was on the mushrooms, and I had images flash up, people flash up in front of me, and they would sort of talk to me for a second or be in the distance and then disappear. It was all very confusing. I definitely did too much too fast. Um, the next thing I can remember is I was going through the film The Matrix and I was playing Neo, right up until the point where he jumps off the building in his first attempt and falls straight on his face. In my dream I actually did this, however I just landed outside my accommodation. Whether or not I actually jumped off of something and hit the ground, or I was already laying on the ground, I'm not sure. Again, I was in this dream, and perhaps in some way I was enacting out my dream, like sleepwalking. Um, and then I was very confused as it seemed like the dream had ended, but I couldn't tell. There was no transition. It's like the dream smoothly went into the real life. Not like when you wake up from a dream and you definitely know that was a dream. It was like it just kept going, but then I was in reality, so it's very strange. I then remember coming across the thought lines that somehow watching the Matrix films are a form of initiation. Into what exactly, I don't know. That to escape the Matrix, you have to be a good person. I then proceeded to find someone to tell about what I was discovering. I walked down the hill to find my friend who was staying at the same place as me, and it was a very hard walk to get there. My motor control was not great, although I still could walk and had control of my body, so that's good. I found my friend, and I can't imagine what I looked like from their perspective, but I was telling them very fast about all the things that I had discovered, and they came back up with me to my place where I begun the trip, and I began to go into something so deep it's hard to put it into words, but I continued on from where my first trip, whereby I saw the creation of this universe right up until the end of this octave with many universes and creators. This time, I flew past this and was going into the entire cycle of this universe. Apparently, from what I saw, this takes 200 billion years and involves many interceding layers that were experienced in unexplainable ways, as infinity revolving around itself infinitely. And it was like I was experiencing the creation of the universe over and over again, and how it was created by thought and all of this stuff. Um, so my next thing I had remember was my friend had left and it was dark. I then proceeded to experience death once again, but from the third person perspective, as I was experiencing the fault lines of all the people who had died being on the divine side of creation. People died at different chakra levels, thinking many different things. Notably, people who flashed up into my mind were Adolf Hitler, John Lennon, and Steve Jobs. What I discovered was that any one time we're operating in one chakra. It fluctuates, but it's always one at a time, and it's essential to have a balance between each. I then was experiencing the pain of dying again and approaching it from a place of love, similar to my previous trips, although this was magnified in intensity. I would experience all these people's deaths and would feel their pain with love. Again, with these mushroom experiences, I don't claim for any of this to be gospel or truth. It's more of a rumor for the listener to do what they will. Um, so I then begun to experience such thought lines as to have a truly unique thought requires a high level of knowledge, and that there was something important about taking kerosene and these mushrooms relating to having an affinity for disobedience. This seemed to be a huge part of this trip, to be an independent free thinker, to go against the authority. And apparently Candida was a very big part of this trip as well, and how nearly everyone has Candida affecting them on different levels, and acts as a teaching function, testing people against the metal of the universe. And Candida is the physical way in which thoughts are controlled and manipulated in the thought war. And it's kind of interesting, around this time I was doing a lot of research into the Candida fungus and what happens when it grows out of control, so it makes sense that this was reflected in my trip. And the next thought line was, this place has been set up to train gods/creators. At the very top, above the darkness, the divine is in control. This universe has been perfectly created. Humanity is at the yellow chakra level in development. Love is the next stage. And then I had the thought lines of to do with the chakras and a movement. It's the red chakra, sex; orange chakra, touch; yellow chakra, love; green chakra, sound; blue chakra, see; purple chakra, thought; pink chakra, consciousness; the white chakra. Now, that's might be quite obvious to some people, but what I experience is that when you are on a certain level, then you have to experience the next level before you can progress. So that's humanity's at the level of touching and all of that, and um, to go to the next level they need love, supposedly anyway. And the final thought line on this little bit here is, it will take something superhuman to overcome the Matrix. The next tangible thing I remember is I had to experience the pain of Jesus dying from a place of love, as his death was the greatest act of love possible to humanity, to die in the most painful way from a place of love. The pain was formidable, but once I overcame this, the feeling of love was equally as amazing. And it really was, I like to tense my body in all these strange positions and had it aligned in this strange way, and my whole body was just cascading with pain, and then it stopped, and it was instantly the opposite, and I had this feeling of great pleasure and love, and I was relaxed, but it still was very painful what I went through. Um, so, unfortunately, as a conclusion, a lot of what happened this time happened at such a high level of consciousness, it is not possible to describe in words, and it progressed so quickly that I could not remember a lot or have a chance to write it down. I did not even need to drink my piss as the last times, and was still locked into this trip for 14 hours after the beginning. I will not do this high of a dose so fast again without a trusted friend to sit with me, as I feel a lot of what happened to me has been lost. I was also enacting my dreams as if I hurt myself, and I must have hurt myself quite badly, as for the next 2 weeks I was in pain throughout my right arm and had quite bad cuts on my knees. I have no idea how these were caused. I now have and so that is the conclusion. And yeah, again, it speaks for these things are really, really powerful objects, and from my experience, I think it's probably better to slowly progress to a higher state than just to go jumping in, guns blazing. As yeah, a lot of my experience, unfortunately, was lost. So it's all a learning curve, It's a good way to learn is to experience it, and there's nobody I know that I can talk to about this stuff, and I did lots of reading about it, but yeah. So that would be the review on my third trip. I have one more talk to do about my other meaningful experience I have with this mushroom. But now, where I am at the moment, it's quite a few months on from this experience, and I have felt like I have done my dash with these mushrooms for quite a while now. Maybe I'll do one trip next year, but other than that, it's very, very taxing on the body, and yeah, so I think it still can take a while as well to integrate. Even what I've learned from these previous trips, it takes a long time to integrate. And again, um, I would imagine to the coming to these levels of knowledge through meditation and personal insight and contemplation will be far more grounded than having your mind sent to these high levels, because it can be very overwhelming. So these are not like a substitute for sincere self-work, that's for sure. And given the times that we are in, it's important that we don't get lost in just exploring ourselves, which is all very good and very necessary, but I believe that it's never ending. There's always more work to be done on yourself, more things to discover about yourself. But then when does it get to the point where you start to forget the world around you in a way, and the current situation that humanity is in, and all of that? Because you're just working on yourself, right? I think there's a level that we get to when we're pretty good, our life's pretty good in most ways, not perfect by any means, but then it turns to helping others, helping our brothers and sisters, as many of them are really, really in a bad situation right now, and this current system that we are all in is not serving humanity in so many ways, and it's important that we remember that and we do everything we can to try and positively influence the events taking place. Okay, so that wraps up this episode of Travis Talking. Thank you all, and see you next time.